The emergency beacon cut through the static like a knife through silence. Captain Elena Rodriguez rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the communication console aboard the cargo freighter Resilience. 3 days into what should have been a routine supply run to the Outer Rim colonies, and now this. "What do you make of it, Marcus?" she asked her second-in-command, a grizzled veteran whose cybernetic left arm gleamed under the bridge's dim lighting. Marcus Chen frowned at the readouts. "Unknown signature, Captain. Not human, that's for certain. The signal pattern is completely foreign to our databases." Elena had been hauling cargo through the galaxy's most dangerous sectors for 15 years. She'd seen pirates, raiders, and, worse things that lurked in the dark between stars. But, an alien distress signal? That was a first, even for her. "Distance?" she asked. 2 hours at maximum burn. "It's coming from the Kepler 442 system, right on the edge of the dead zone." The dead zone. Even the name sent chills down Elena's spine. It was a region of space where ships went missing, where gravitational anomalies played havoc with navigation systems, and where smart captains knew better than to venture without good reason. Elena looked around her bridge crew. Besides Marcus, there was Yuki Tanaka at the helm, barely 22 and fresh out of the academy, but with reflexes that had saved their lives more than once. At the engineering station sat Dmitry Volkov, a mountain of a man whose gentle hands could coax miracles from even the most damaged systems. Finally, there was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, their medical officer and xenobiologist, whose curiosity about alien life had gotten them into trouble before. "Captain," Sarah spoke up from her station, her voice barely containing her excitement, "the signal patterns suggest a highly advanced civilization. The mathematical progressions embedded in the distress call are incredibly sophisticated." "Sophisticated enough to be a trap," Marcus warned. "Remember the Centauri incident? The raiders used false distress signals to lure merchant vessels into ambushes." Elena weighed their options. They were carrying medical supplies destined for New Terra, where a plague had broken out among the colonists. Every hour counted. But the universal laws of space were clear: no distress signal went unanswered, no matter the species. "We investigate," she decided. "But we go in ready for anything." Marcus, prep the weapons systems. "Dmitry, I want every emergency protocol ready to execute on my word." "Yuki, plot a course that keeps us mobile and gives us multiple escape routes." "Yes, Captain," came the chorus of responses. As the Resilience altered course toward the unknown signal, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that this decision would change everything. The ship's engines hummed with increased power as they pushed toward the edge of known space, carrying 5 humans toward a meeting that would reshape their understanding of the galaxy. 2 hours later, they dropped out of hyperspace at the coordinates. What greeted them defied all expectations. The vessel floating before them was unlike anything in human records. It resembled a massive crystalline flower, its translucent petals catching and refracting the light from the nearby star into brilliant rainbows. The ship had to be at least 3 kilometers long, dwarfing their modest freighter. Yet despite its size, it appeared to be drifting powerless, its usually vibrant surfaces dim and flickering. "My God," Sarah whispered, her scientific instruments going wild with readings. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures, but they're fluctuating rapidly." "Whatever happened to them, they're in serious trouble." "Any signs of life?" Elena asked. "Difficult to say with certainty, but yes. I'm reading what appear to be multiple life signs, though they're weak and getting weaker." Elena made her decision quickly. "Marcus, scan for weapons or defensive systems. Dmitry, prepare the docking tube. We're going aboard." "Captain, that might not be wise," Marcus cautioned. "We don't know anything about their atmosphere, their biology, or their intentions." "Then, we'll find out," Elena replied firmly. "Prep the environmental suits. Sarah, you're with me. I need your expertise on alien biology. Marcus, you have the bridge." 30 minutes later, Elena and Sarah floated through the docking tube that connected their ship to the alien vessel. The tube had automatically adjusted to interface with the alien ship's hull, a testament to the advanced technology they were dealing with. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, revealing a corridor that seemed to pulse with its own internal light. The walls were smooth and organic looking, more grown than built. Bioluminescent veins ran along the surfaces, pulsing weakly like a dying heartbeat. Atmosphere is breathable, Sarah reported, checking her instruments. Slightly higher oxygen content than Earth normal, but well within human tolerance. Temperature is comfortable. It's almost as if. As if what? As if the ship is trying to accommodate us. These readings suggest the atmosphere has been actively adjusted since we arrived. They moved deeper into the vessel, following the strongest life sign readings. The corridors were wide and gracefully curved, designed for beings larger than humans. Everything about the ship suggested a civilization that prized beauty and harmony alongside function. They found them in what appeared to be the ship's equivalent of a medical bay. 7 beings lay in crystalline pods that pulsed with fading energy. They were tall, perhaps 8 feet in height, with pale, almost translucent skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Their faces were elongated and elegant, with large eyes that remained closed in unconsciousness. Delicate, wing-like appendages extended from their backs, though whether for flight or some other purpose was unclear. "They're beautiful," Sarah breathed, her scientific detachment momentarily forgotten. As they approached the nearest pod, one of the beings stirred. Large, violet eyes opened and focused on the 2 humans with unmistakable intelligence. The being's mouth moved, producing sounds unlike anything either human had ever heard, a language like wind chimes and flowing water. Elena felt something she couldn't explain. A warmth in her mind, a gentle presence that seemed to speak without words. Images flashed through her consciousness: a dying star, evacuation ships, desperate flight, and then system failures leaving them stranded in space. "Captain," Sarah gasped, I think it's communicating telepathically. I'm getting impressions, images. They're refugees. Their sun went nova and destroyed their homeworld. This ship is one of the last evacuation vessels." More of the beings were awakening now, their large eyes focusing on the humans with expressions that clearly conveyed both hope and fear. Elena found herself stepping closer to the first being who had awakened, a female by the delicate features and smaller stature. The telepathic contact strengthened, and Elena felt herself drawn into a brief but intense mental connection. She saw flashes of the being's memories, a world of crystal spires and floating gardens, a civilization that had achieved harmony between technology and nature. She saw the terror as their star began its death throes, the frantic evacuation efforts, and the desperation as ship after ship failed to reach safety. But, more than memories, Elena felt the being's essence. There was a profound sadness, yes, but also incredible strength and a fierce protective instinct toward her people. Elena realized with a start that this being was likely their leader, responsible for the lives of not just the 6 others in this medical bay, but potentially thousands more throughout the ship. The connection broke as the being's strength failed, and she slumped back in her pod. But, in that moment of contact, Elena had felt something else, a bond forming, unexpected and powerful. These weren't just alien refugees to be rescued and forgotten. These were individuals with hopes, fears, and dreams not so different from humans. "Sarah, can you stabilize them?" Elena asked urgently. "I'll need to interface our medical systems with theirs. It's risky, but..." Sarah was already moving, connecting her portable medical scanner to the alien ship systems. "Captain, their technology is incredibly advanced. I think I can establish a stable connection, but it might take hours to understand their physiology well enough to help." "Do it. I'll contact the ship and have Dmitri start working on their power systems. We're not leaving them to die out here." As Sarah worked frantically to save the dying aliens, Elena found her gaze returning again and again to the female leader. Something about that brief mental contact had changed her fundamentally. She felt responsible for these beings now, connected to them in a way that went beyond mere duty or compassion. Hours passed in a blur of activity. Dmitri managed to jury-rig a power connection that stabilized the alien ship's life support. Sarah worked tirelessly to understand the aliens' physiology and provide the medical support they needed. Meanwhile, Elena coordinated between her crew and began to grasp the full scope of their situation. The ship carried nearly 3,000 survivors of what the being Elena had connected with, whose name sounded something like Zara F to human ears, called the Luminari. They had been traveling for months in cryogenic suspension while their ship's automated systems searched for a habitable world. But cosmic radiation and micrometeorite damage had slowly degraded their systems until they were on the verge of complete failure. As the immediate medical crisis passed and the Luminari began to recover, Elena found herself in their ship's central chamber speaking with Zaraeth through the translation device Sarah had cobbled together from their respective technologies. "Your people have saved us," Zaraeth said, her voice like music even through the mechanical translator. "We owe you a debt that spans the stars themselves." "You don't owe us anything," Elena replied. "It's what any decent person would do." Zaraeth's large violet eyes studied Elena intently. "You speak truly, but I sense there is more." The connection we shared, it was not merely telepathic communication. Among my people, such bonds are rare and sacred. Elena felt her cheeks flush. She had been trying to rationalize away the strange feelings she'd experienced during their mental contact, but Zaraeth's words brought them rushing back. "I don't understand what happened." "Nor do I, completely," Zaraeth admitted. "But I know that our meeting was not mere chance. The universe has brought us together for a purpose." Before Elena could respond, Marcus's voice crackled through her comm unit. "Captain, we've got company. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Configuration unknown, but they're heading straight for us." Elena's blood ran cold. In all the hours they'd spent helping the Luminari, she'd forgotten about the dangers that lurked in this region of space. Now those dangers had found them. "I have to go," she told Zaraeth urgently. "Stay here where it's safe." But, as she turned to leave, she felt a gentle hand on her arm. Zaraeth's touch sent a warm current through her body, and she found herself looking into those mesmerizing violet eyes. "I come with you," Zaraeth said simply. "My ship has weapons, though they are depleted. But, perhaps together, we can face whatever threatens us." Elena wanted to argue, to protect this beautiful, fragile being who had already suffered so much. But the determined set of Zaraeth's jaw told her that argument would be futile. More than that, she realized she wanted the Luminari leader beside her. "All right," she agreed. "But we do this my way." As they hurried back toward the docking tube, Elena couldn't help but wonder how a simple cargo run had suddenly become so complicated. But, looking at Zaraeth moving gracefully beside her, her translucent skin shimmering with renewed health and determination, Elena realized she wouldn't change a thing. The universe had indeed brought them together, and, whatever came next, they would face it together. The approaching ships represented danger, but they also represented a test of the strange bond that was forming between human and Luminari, between Elena and Zaraeth. Whatever those ships wanted, whatever threat they posed, Elena was determined that the Luminari would not face extinction on her watch. The night that was supposed to pass quietly in hyperspace had become something far more significant, though she didn't yet understand how forever it would truly be. Back aboard the Resilience, Elena took her place on the bridge while Zaraeth stood beside her, tall and ethereal in the bridge's harsh lighting. The approaching ships were now clearly visible on the main screen, sleek and predatory in design. "Identification?" Elena asked. "Negative on any registry match," Marcus reported. "But, Captain, I'm reading some seriously heavy weaponry on those ships." "We're outgunned at least 3-1. Elena felt Zaraeth's presence in her mind again, gentle but urgent. Images flowed between them. The attacking ships were known to the Luminari as Devourers, a violent species that followed refugee convoys to strip them of technology and resources. They had been pursuing Zaraeth's people across half the galaxy. "They've found us," Zaraeth said aloud, her musical voice tight with old fear. "The Devourers consume everything in their path. They will not stop until they have taken everything we have, including our lives." Elena's jaw tightened. She looked around her bridge at her crew, good people who had signed on for cargo runs, not interstellar war. Then, she looked at Zaraeth, this extraordinary being who had already endured the loss of her entire world. The choice was simple. "All hands, battle stations," Elena ordered. "We're not running." As alarms blared and her crew moved with practiced efficiency, Elena felt the bond with Zaraeth strengthen. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The night that was meant to pass had indeed become something far more permanent, though the true depth of that bond was yet to be tested in the fires of combat. The first volley of plasma fire lit up space around the Resilience like deadly fireworks. Elena gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under the impact of near misses, Yuki's skilled piloting keeping them alive through a dance of death among the stars. "Return fire," Elena commanded. The freighter's modest defensive weapons sparked against the shields of the lead Devourer vessel, barely scratching its dark hull. These weren't pirates or raiders, they were something far worse. The Devourer ships moved with a predatory intelligence that spoke of countless previous hunts. "Captain, their shields are holding," Marcus reported tersely. "Our weapons aren't making a dent." Beside Elena, Zaraeth stood with her eyes closed, her translucent skin glowing brighter with each passing second. The Luminary leader's wing-like appendages had spread slightly, and Elena could feel waves of mental energy radiating from her. "Zaraeth, what are you doing?" "Connecting with my ship," came the reply, though Zaraeth's lips hadn't moved. The words formed directly in Elena's mind. "The Star Whisper still has power. We can fight." Through their strengthening bond, Elena felt the vast consciousness of the Luminary vessel awakening. It was more than just a ship, it was a living extension of its people, grown rather than built, its crystalline structure capable of channeling and focusing energy in ways human technology couldn't match. The Star Whisper came alive with brilliant light, its petal-like sections unfolding like a flower greeting the dawn. Energy cascaded along its translucent hull in patterns too beautiful to be merely functional. When it fired, the beam that lanced out wasn't crude plasma but something far more elegant and deadly. The lead Devourer ship's shields collapsed instantly, its hull melting like ice under a blowtorch. "Impossible," Marcus breathed. What kind of weapon was that? Through her connection with Zaraeth, Elena understood. It wasn't just a weapon, it was the focused will of an entire civilization, their mastery over the fundamental forces of creation and destruction made manifest. The Luminary had been peaceful, but they weren't helpless. The remaining two Devourer ships responded with increased aggression, concentrating their fire on the Star Whisper. The beautiful vessel's shields flared and sparked under the assault, its light dimming. They're targeting the Luminary ship specifically, Elena realized. They know it's the bigger threat. She made a split-second decision that would have seemed insane an hour ago but now felt as natural as breathing. All power to engines. We're going to ram the nearest Devourer. "Captain!" Marcus protested. "That's suicide. Not if we do it right. Dimitri, I need you to overload the cargo bay containment fields on my mark. We're going to use our medical supplies as a weapon." Elena felt Zaraeth's surprise and admiration through their bond. The plan was typically human in its audacity, using healing to create destruction. The Resilience accelerated toward the second Devourer ship, weaving between weapons fire with Yuki's expert handling. At the last possible moment, Elena gave the order. The containment fields collapsed, releasing clouds of pressurized medical gases and compounds into space just as they scraped along the Devourer's hull. The chemical reaction was spectacular. The gases, designed to be beneficial to human physiology, proved violently corrosive to the exotic materials of the Devourer ship. Entire sections of its hull dissolved away, atmosphere venting into space as the vessel lost structural integrity. But the maneuver hadn't been without cost. The Resilience shuddered under the impact, warning lights flashing across the bridge as systems failed throughout the ship. "Hull breach in Cargo Bay 3, Dimitri reported. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we're venting atmosphere." The third Devourer ship, seeing its companions destroyed, began to retreat. But Zaraeth wasn't finished. Elena felt the Luminary leaders rage through their bond, the cold, pure anger of a protector whose people had been threatened. The Star Whisper pulsed once, brilliantly, and a wave of energy raced across space. When it reached the fleeing Devourer, the ship simply stopped. Its engines died, its lights went out, and it began to drift powerless through the void. "What did you do?" Elena asked. "I reminded their ship what it means to be still," Zaraeth replied, her mental voice touched with exhaustion. "Their vessel remembers being metal and crystal in the heart of a star. Now it wishes to return to that peaceful state." Elena stared at her in amazement. The Luminaries' power wasn't just technological, it was something far deeper, a harmony with the fundamental forces of existence that humans were only beginning to understand. Over the next several hours, as both ships conducted repairs, Elena found herself spending more and more time aboard the Star Whisper. What had begun as coordination between allies was becoming something far more personal. Zaraeth showed her through the organic corridors of her ship, explaining how the Luminari grew their vessels from living crystal that responded to thought and emotion. Every surface told a story, every chamber held memories of the lost homeworld. This was our greatest achievement, Zaraeth explained as they stood in what could only be called a memory garden. Crystalline formations rose from the floor like frozen trees, each one containing the preserved thoughts and experiences of Luminari who had lived and died on their lost world. We learned to capture not just information, but the essence of experience itself. Elena reached out to touch one of the crystal trees and gasped as visions flooded her mind. She saw the Luminari homeworld as it had been, cities of living light floating among crystal forests, beings of pure thought and emotion dancing through skies that shimmered with aurora. She felt the joy of their music, the depth of their philosophy, the love that bound their society together. "It's beautiful," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "No wonder you mourn its loss so deeply." "Yet perhaps not all is lost," Zaraeth said softly. "You humans, you are strange to us. Your minds burn so brightly, so fiercely. You face the universe with such courage, such determination to protect others even at cost to yourselves. Perhaps the universe brought us together to learn from each other." Their eyes met, and Elena felt the bond between them deepen further. It was more than telepathic communication now, it was a sharing of souls that transcended the boundaries between species. "I don't want to leave you," Elena admitted. "My people, my ship, they need me. But I feel like I'm being torn in half." Zaraeth's large violet eyes filled with understanding. "And I feel the same division. My people need a leader to guide them to a new home. Yet my heart tells me that home may not be a place, but a person." They were interrupted by Sarah's voice over the comm system. "Captain, you need to see this. We've been analyzing the data from the Devourer ships, and there's something you should know." Back aboard the Resilience, Sarah's face was grim as she displayed her findings on the main screen. The Devourers weren't just random pirates. They were tracking the Luminari specifically, following some kind of energy signature that the Star Whisper gives off. "What kind of signature?" Elena asked. "It's tied to their biological processes," Dr. Mitchell explained. "The Luminari ships are grown, not built, and they maintain a quantum entanglement with their creators. The Devourers have been using this connection to hunt down Luminari survivors across the galaxy." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "How many survivors are left?" "Based on the Devourer ship logs, we estimate fewer than 10,000 scattered across dozens of ships, all being systematically hunted down and destroyed." Through her bond with Zaraeth, Elena felt the Luminari leader's grief and terror. Her people weren't just refugees, they were the last remnants of their entire species, and they were being driven to extinction. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "The quantum signature is strongest when multiple Luminari ships are together. If they try to gather into a fleet for protection, they become easier to track." A trap, Elena realized. They're forced to stay scattered and vulnerable, or risk drawing every Devourer in the sector down on them. "Captain," Marcus interjected, "I hate to interrupt, but we've got a bigger problem. Long-range sensors are picking up more Devourer ships heading this way. A lot more. At least a dozen vessels, including some capital ship signatures." Elena felt the weight of impossible choices settling on her shoulders. They could run, try to escape with the Star Whisper and its precious cargo of survivors. But that would mean abandoning the Luminari's scattered kin to inevitable destruction. Or they could stay and fight, but, against those odds, destruction was equally certain. "How long until they arrive?" she asked. 6 hours, maybe 8 if we're lucky." Elena looked around her bridge at her crew, her family, really. They'd followed her into this situation without question, trusting her judgment even when it led them into danger. Now she was about to ask them to make an even greater sacrifice. "I won't order any of you to stay," she said quietly. We can transfer essential supplies to the Star Whisper and use the escape pods. The Luminary technology might be able to keep us alive until rescue arrives. Begging your pardon, Captain, Dmitri rumbled from his engineering station, but that's the dumbest thing you've said in the 15 years I've known you. Elena blinked in surprise at her gentle engineer's unusual display of assertiveness. These people saved our lives back there, he continued. Their weapons turned the tide when we would have been destroyed. You think any of us are going to abandon them now? Dimitri's right, Yuki added from the helm. Besides, I've been studying their ship's capabilities with their help. I think I can interface our navigation systems with theirs. Combined coordination might give us an edge. And I've been working with their medical officer, Sarah chimed in. Their understanding of quantum biology is incredible. I think we might be able to do something about their tracking problem, given enough time. Marcus was the last to speak, and his gruff voice was unusually soft. Captain, I've seen you make a lot of tough calls over the years. But I've never seen you as sure of anything as you are about protecting these people. If you're staying, we're staying. Elena felt tears stinging her eyes. Through her bond with Zaraeth, she felt the Luminary leader's wonder at the loyalty and courage of the humans she'd come to know. All right then, Elena said, her voice steadying with resolve. We have 8 hours to figure out how to save an entire species. Let's get to work. The next few hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Human ingenuity combined with Luminary technology in ways that surprised both species. Dmitri worked with the Star Whisper's engineers to create hybrid systems that could channel the vessel's exotic energies through human-designed focusing arrays. Sarah collaborated with the Luminary medical officer to develop a quantum dampening field that might mask their tracking signature. Meanwhile, Elena and Zaraeth worked on the most important task of all, sending out coded messages to every Luminary ship within 100 light-years, calling them to gather at a set of coordinates deep in the asteroid belt of a nearby system. It's exactly what the Devourers expect us not to do, Elena explained to her skeptical crew. Bring all the Luminary together in one place. But, if Sarah's dampening field works, they won't be able to track the gathering. And, if it doesn't, we'll have the entire surviving Luminary fleet in one place to make our last stand, Marcus finished grimly. Through their deepening bond, Elena felt Zaraeth's mixture of hope and terror. This plan would either save her people or doom them all. But, as more and more Luminary ships began responding to their call, Elena realized something profound was happening. The scattered survivors weren't just coming because their leader had called them. They were coming because they sensed something new in Zaraeth's mental signature: hope, determination, and, most importantly, the strength that came from alliance with beings who would stand with them against the darkness. Humans might be primitive compared to the ancient Luminary civilization, but they brought something precious to the alliance: the unshakable conviction that no fight was hopeless as long as you had people willing to stand beside you. As the first Luminary ships began arriving at the rendezvous point, their crystalline hulls shimmering in the reflected light of the asteroids, Elena realized that the universe had indeed brought them all together for a purpose. The bond between her and Zaraeth was just the beginning of something much larger, an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. But, first, they had to survive the next few hours. Long-range sensors showed the Devourer fleet approaching fast, and, despite their preparations, the odds were still overwhelming. Elena looked at Zaraeth, drawing strength from their connection, and prepared to face whatever came next. The night that was meant to pass had indeed become something permanent. Now it was time to find out if that bond was strong enough to forge a new future for two very different species among the stars. The asteroid field around Kepler 186 had never seen anything like the gathering that now floated in its shadow. 17 Luminary ships had answered the call, their crystalline hulls creating a constellation of beauty against the dark rock and ice. Each vessel carried hundreds of survivors, nearly 8,000 of the last Luminary in the galaxy. Elena stood in the command center they'd established on the largest asteroid, watching the tactical displays that showed the approaching Devourer fleet. 38 ships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed even the largest Luminary vessel. The enemy had brought everything they had for this final hunt. Sarah's dampening field is working perfectly, Yuki reported from her station. The Devourers are having to search the entire asteroid field grid by grid. It's buying us time. How much time? Elena asked. 6 hours, maybe 8 before they find us.
Elena nodded, turning to look at the extraordinary assembly around her.
Humans and Luminari work side by side, their technologies and philosophies blending in ways that should have been impossible. Dmitri was deep in conversation with a Luminari engineer whose name sounded like wind through crystal chimes, designing weapons that channeled both human pragmatism and Luminari elegance.
Sarah had established a medical bay where human determination met Luminari wisdom, creating healing techniques neither species could have achieved alone.
But it was the bond between Elena and Zaraeth that anchored it all. Their connection had deepened beyond anything either had imagined possible, becoming a bridge not just between two individuals but between two entire ways of understanding the universe.
"The fleet commanders want to speak with you," Zaraeth said, approaching with her characteristic grace.
Even in their dire circumstances, the Luminari leader radiated calm strength. "They need to understand why we've chosen to gather here, to risk everything on a single battle."
Elena followed Zaraeth to the central chamber where the remaining Luminari fleet commanders had assembled.
They were a magnificent sight, tall, luminous beings whose very presence seemed to make the asteroid's cavern glow with soft light.
But Elena could see the fear in their ancient eyes, the weight of being responsible for the last remnants of their civilization.
Commander Rodriguez, the eldest of them, spoke, his voice like distant thunder through the translation device.
"We have followed Zaraeth's call because we trust her wisdom.
But many of our people question this strategy.
Why gather here only to face certain destruction?"
Elena looked around the circle of alien faces, feeling the weight of their expectations. Through her bond with Zaraeth, she could sense their emotions: fear, yes, but also desperate hope that somehow the humans might have an answer they couldn't see.
"Because running hasn't saved you," Elena said simply. 4 months you've stayed scattered, trying to hide, trying to survive. And how many ships have you lost? How many of your people have died alone in the dark while the Devourers picked you off one by one?"
The commander's expressions grew pained. Through Zaraeth, Elena felt their grief for the countless ships that had simply vanished, never to be heard from again. "You're the most advanced species I've ever encountered," Elena continued. "Your technology, your understanding of the universe, your very way of thinking, it's all beyond anything humanity has achieved.
But you've been thinking like prey.
Today, we're going to remind the galaxy that the Luminari are predators when they need to be." One of the younger commanders, her wing-like appendages fluttering with agitation, stepped forward.
"And if we fail? If our gathering here only makes it easier for the Devourers to finish what they started?" Elena met her gaze steadily.
"Then, we fail together, fighting for something worth dying for."
"But we're not going to fail. Because you're not alone anymore."
Through the bond, she felt Zaraeth's surge of emotion, love, gratitude, and fierce determination all flowing together. The feeling spread through the assembled commanders as Zaraeth shared it telepathically, and Elena watched as their postures straightened, their luminous skin growing brighter with renewed purpose.
"What do you need from us?" the eldest commander asked. Elena smiled. "Everything you've got."
The next 6 hours transformed the asteroid field into a carefully prepared trap. Using techniques that blended human tactical thinking with Luminari energy manipulation, they turned the asteroids themselves into weapons. Crystalline growth sprouted from the rocks, channels for focusing and redirecting energy that would turn the Devourer's own weapons against them. The human ships in the small fleet, Elena's Resilience, and 3 other cargo vessels that had arrived in response to distress calls were retrofitted with Luminari power cores and weapon systems. They became hybrid vessels, carrying the best of both technologies. But the real weapon was something neither species had possessed alone: unity of purpose. As the Devourer fleet finally located their position and began its assault, every human and Luminari fighter moved with perfect coordination, guided by the telepathic network that Zaraeth and her people maintained and the tactical genius that humanity brought to warfare. The battle began with the Devourer's traditional overwhelming assault, waves of plasma fire and quantum torpedoes designed to shatter any resistance quickly. But instead of the scattered, desperate defense they expected, they found something entirely new. The Luminari ships moved like dancers, their crystalline hulls refracting and redirecting the Devourer weapons back at their attackers with compound interest. The hybrid human Luminari vessels darted through the chaos like deadly wasps, their modified weapons carving through Devourer shields as if they were paper. Elena commanded the battle from the Bridge of the Resilience, but she wasn't truly alone in her thoughts. Through her bond with Zaraeth, she had access to the collective tactical awareness of the entire Luminari fleet. She could see the battle from dozens of perspectives simultaneously, anticipating enemy moves and coordinating responses with inhuman precision. Devourer Dreadnought moving to flank position 7, she called out, somehow knowing this despite the ship being beyond her sensor's range. Luminari Squadron 3, redirect to intercept. Human vessels, concentrate fire on their port engine cluster. The combined assault was devastating. The massive dreadnought's engines erupted in brilliant explosions, sending the vessel spinning helplessly into a cluster of asteroids that Dimitri had mined with Luminari energy crystals. The resulting detonation lit up space like a newborn star. But the Devourers weren't finished. Their remaining ships regrouped, abandoning their traditional tactics for something more desperate. They began ramming attacks, using their vessels as weapons to break through the Allied defenses. It was then that Elena felt the true depth of the Luminari's power through her connection with Zaraeth. The surviving fleet commanders joined their minds together in a mental harmony that Elena could barely comprehend, their combined will reaching out across space to touch the quantum foundations of reality itself. The Devourer ships began to change. Their hulls, composed of metals torn from 1,000 conquered worlds, remembered what they had been before violence shaped them. Armor plating softened back into ore, weapons systems recalled being simple crystals and planetary cores. One by one, the Devourer vessels began to fall apart at the molecular level, not destroyed but gently returned to the peaceful states they had known before being forged into instruments of war. When the battle ended, the asteroid field was quiet except for the gentle humming of Luminari engines and the steady heartbeat of human technology. Of the 38 Devourer ships, only twisted debris remained, already being reclaimed by the crystalline growths the Luminari had spread through the asteroid field. Elena found herself floating in the observation deck of the Star Whisper, looking out at the aftermath of the battle. Beside her, Zaraeth's presence was warm and comforting, their bond now so deep that words were rarely necessary. "It's over," Elena said softly. "This battle, yes," Zaraeth replied. "But I sense this is only the beginning. Word will spread of what happened here. Other species will hear that the Luminari have found allies, that we are no longer victims to be hunted. And other humans will hear that there are wonders among the stars worth protecting," Elena added. "This changes everything, doesn't it?" Through their connection, Elena felt Zaraeth's agreement and, something more, a vision of the future they were building together. Human colonies and Luminari settlements growing side by side, sharing knowledge and wisdom. Human boldness tempered by Luminari wisdom, Luminari beauty protected by human determination. "There will be challenges," Zaraeth warned. "Both our species will struggle to understand each other. There will be fear, misunderstanding, conflict." Elena smiled, taking Zaraeth's delicate hand in her own calloused one. The touch sent warmth flowing between them, a reminder of the bond that had made all of this possible. "Then, we'll face those challenges the same way we faced the Devourers, together." Over the following weeks, as the combined fleet made its way toward the human colony worlds, Elena watched as the impossible became routine. Human engineers learned to grow their ships instead of building them, coaxing crystalline hulls from seeds of living metal. Luminari philosophers discovered the joy of human music and laughter, their own harmonies becoming richer and more complex through exposure to human emotion. The bond between Elena and Zaraeth served as a bridge for their peoples, but it had become much more than that. What had begun as a telepathic connection during a moment of crisis had evolved into something deeper than love, stronger than friendship. They were two halves of something new, a hybrid consciousness that belonged fully to neither species but served as a living symbol of what they could become together. When they reached New Terra, the colony world that had been Elena's original destination, they found it in desperate need of the medical supplies she carried. But the Luminari brought something more precious than medicine, hope. Their mastery of biological healing, combined with human medical knowledge, ended the plague that had ravaged the colony in a matter of days. The grateful colonists became the first humans to witness the true wonder of Luminari civilization. They saw the crystal gardens that could purify air and water while creating beauty that brought tears to the eyes. They experienced the harmony of the Luminari's music, compositions that touched the soul directly and healed emotional wounds that conventional therapy couldn't reach. In return, the Luminari discovered the infectious optimism of humanity, the species that looked at every setback as a challenge to overcome rather than a defeat to accept. They learned about human concepts like home and family that weren't defined by genetics or telepathic connection but by choice and shared experience. Months later, Elena stood in the council chamber of New Terra's capital, watching as human and Luminari representatives signed the first formal alliance between their species. The document was both printed on human paper and grown into a living crystal matrix that would preserve its terms for millennia to come. Strange to think it all started with a simple cargo run, Marcus commented, joining her at the observation window. He wore the insignia of the new interspecies fleet, an organization that had grown from the improvised alliance forged in the asteroid field.
Did it, though? Elena mused, feeling Zaraetha's presence approaching from across the chamber. Sometimes I wonder if the universe had this planned all along.
The distress signal, the devourers, even the plague here, it all led to this moment.
You sound like you're starting to believe in destiny, Captain.
Elena smiled as Zaraeth joined them, the Luminari leader now wearing a blend of human and Luminari formal attire that somehow managed to honor both cultures while creating something entirely new.
Maybe I am, Elena admitted.
Or maybe I've just learned that some bonds are too strong to be explained by chance alone.
Through their connection, she felt Zaraetha's amusement and deep contentment.
The Luminari leader had found her people a new home among the stars, not a single planet but a network of worlds where they could rebuild their civilization alongside their human allies. More importantly, she had found her own home in the bond she shared with Elena.
The first joint colony ship launches next month, Zaraeth reported.
Engineers from both species working together to create something neither could build alone.
They're calling it the Unity. Fitting name, Elena said. Will you be its captain? Zaraeth asked, though through their bond she already knew the answer.
Elena looked out at the stars visible through the chamber's transparent dome, thinking of all the worlds waiting to be discovered, all the wonders that two species might uncover together. The cargo hauler she'd once been seemed like a different person entirely, someone from a time when the universe had been smaller and lonelier.
We'll be its captains, she corrected, feeling Zaraetha's joy surge through their connection. Together.
As the ceremony continued around them, Elena reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. One night that was supposed to pass quietly in hyperspace had become the foundation for an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. A simple distress call had led to a bond that transcended species, philosophy, and every limitation they'd thought insurmountable. The devourers were gone, scattered to the void or converted to more peaceful pursuits by Luminari quantum harmonies.
In their place, something new was growing, a civilization that combined human determination with Luminari wisdom, human innovation with Luminari beauty.
And, at the heart of it all was the bond between a cargo ship captain and an alien leader, two beings who had found in each other not just love or friendship, but a glimpse of what their species could become when they faced the universe together. The night had passed, but what it left behind would endure forever, a bridge between worlds, a harmony between minds, and a promise that no matter how vast and dangerous the galaxy might be, none of them would ever have to face it alone again. Years later, when historians of both species would study this period, they would struggle to explain how a chance encounter had led to such profound change. They would analyze the technologies shared, the tactical innovations developed, the political frameworks created. But Elena and Zaraeth, still linked by a bond that had only grown stronger with time, knew the real answer was simpler than any analysis could capture. Sometimes the universe brings together exactly the right beings at exactly the right moment, and, when they choose to trust each other despite their differences, they discover that there is no limit to what they can accomplish together. The stars were vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered. And they would discover them together, two souls linked across the void, proving that the greatest adventures begin not with a destination but with a willingness to help a stranger in need. The night that was meant to pass had become a forever bond, and the galaxy would never be the same.